All right, you ready? Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Marc.
Okay, so this is a little
Nailed it.
different. We haven't done this before, but today, so this is one day after our episode recording with Kris yesterday. This is our first time trying a sponsor message that is not done at the same time as our episode. So you can notice that we're in slightly different clothes and the lighting is
Mhm.
slightly different, and Rachel's even in a different place. So again, we're baby podcasters and we're going to see how well this goes. But today we are going to be joined by Magic School AI. And Rachel, if you want to bring them out, and they're here to give a little sponsorship message for our podcast. So, Rachel, you can take it
Yes.
away.
Yes, thanks. And welcome, Natalie and Andrew. Andrew, you and I haven't had a chance to meet in person. I know of you and your name and the work and this growing conversation around Magic School AI, but we haven't had a chance to really get introduced yet. Could I ask you, rather than me bumbling through one, would you say hello, introduce yourself to our listeners and ACPE friends and colleagues, and then also hand it over to Natalie for us?
Absolutely. So first of all, thanks so much for having us. We're really excited to be here. My name's Andrew Davies. I'm the social media manager here at Magic School. I'm a former educator in the North Texas area. I taught fourth and fifth grade for 12 years, and then I was a digital learning coach for 3 years after that. And I'll pass it on to Natalie.
Yeah. Hey, we are so happy to be here. I am so lucky to be local, born and raised Washingtonians. So happy to know quite a few people in the ACPE bunch. Such a fun crew. But for those who don't know me, hello. And as I said, born and raised here in Washington, very proud graduate of both Tacoma and Sumner Public Schools, also a very proud graduate of UW. Go Dogs. I am a tortured lifelong Mariners fan and just really happy to be able to support the work. I'm an early childhood educator at heart. I previously taught pre-K, kindergarten, and second grade, and happy to be continuing to support Washington educators and throughout the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So, Natalie, I assume that there's something like genetic in Washington when you're born and raised that requires you to wear Mariners and Seahawks gear as much as possible.
Correct.
I noticed that everybody's in jerseys today minus me because Marc was mean and I didn't get the memo. And
Well, I grew up in
if I had
Oregon,
gotten the memo,
so if Oregon was playing this weekend, I'd be wearing my Oregon gear. I had it all out, but they're not playing this weekend, so we went Seahawks instead.
You went Seahawks, yes. And Marc, that means that you have a choice because you weren't born and raised in Washington. And Natalie, if I had gotten the memo from Marc, I would likely be wearing a Cubs jersey. And so I have full empathy and sympathy, and we'll just tell you there's always next year.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But it was so close. It was so close.
My household is a split Cubs and Mariners. Actually, my husband's a huge Cubbies. So I appreciate the camaraderie on multiple levels.
Yeah, it was an exciting October for us all,
Sure
right?
was.
I'm a lifelong sufferer as well. So as a Vikings fan, it never ends.
Yes, yes. And I think if I have to figure out the clue game on the jerseys, it might be because of our conference theme for May 2026, which is Believe It. And while they might not be football, not American football, but football jerseys, we are here ready for the Believe It 2026 conference. And with that, Andrew and Natalie, take it away and tell us a little bit about Magic School AI and just the stories and the things that you're seeing and hearing and what you're excited to show off.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start us off. So I'm going to tell us a little bit of the story of Magic School, how we got to where we are today, and then Natalie's going to share some awesome stories about what she's seen and heard happening up there in the Pacific Northwest. So really, our story, Magic School story, starts with Adil Khan, who's our founder. He's a former teacher, educator of over a decade, founding principal of one of the top performing schools in Denver. And in 2022, when ChatGPT kind of came around, he kind of took a step back and looked to see what was next for him. And so he started showing off, ChatGPT and its potential for teachers to some of his colleagues, kind of showing them how it could help them with those daily time-consuming tasks like recommendation letters, adapting materials, differentiation, et cetera, et cetera. And all the teachers that he showed it to loved it. But what he found was he went to check in with them maybe a week or two later, and most of them had stopped using it. And it wasn't because there was a lack of interest, it was because there was a lack of bandwidth. But teachers just didn't have the time to become prompting experts, right? They didn't even know, they were like, what is a prompt at that point? And so he decided he wanted to make something better for teachers and create an AI platform that was specifically designed for them. And so he teamed up with several former colleagues, started the company December of 2022, and then it launched launched Magic School in May of 2023. And so from there, what was kind of wild is most of the growth took place all by word of mouth because it's really tiny. And I think Magic School reached its first 1 million users without spending a dime on marketing, which is wild to think about. And that just kind of proved the point that this type of technology was wanted by teachers. We hadn't arrived yet with a tool that would work for them. And so you fast forward to today, we're reaching close to 7 million users worldwide across 13,000 schools in 160 different countries. Teachers, share with us they're saving 7 to 10 hours a week on planning and differentiation assessments. And the most important piece to that is that the time saved now gets to be poured back into their students. And so instead of spending all this time on these tedious tasks, like I remember as a teacher, spending so much time on just even writing simple emails, they can now put that energy into making experiences for their kids, right? Making sure their lessons are super impactful and reaching every kid's needs. So, and that leads me to kind of the next phase of Magic School, which was Magic Student, which is my favorite part of Magic School, which is where the students get to interact with AI in a safe space that is moderated by teachers. And the teachers get to handpick what tools the students are using, they get to coach them, if you will, with our theme here, coach them on how to use AI in a responsible way. And that's, to me, my favorite part of what Magic School is. And there's even more to come coming here in the next few months. We're really excited about that. I think is going to take it to the next level. But I know Natalie, I don't want to talk too much more because Natalie's going to share a lot of the really cool, impactful stories that she's seen and heard about.
Yeah. Andrew, thank you so much for sharing more of that kind of origin story. And I know that you are so humble, but you have been a huge part of that and have been here every step of the way from the beginning. And I am excited to just peel back the curtain a little bit and share some of the ways that Magic School is being used here in the Pacific Northwest. Was honestly really hard to choose because there's just so much to be celebrated. So it's hard to pick just a few examples. But we've got nearly 75,000 teachers in our neck of the woods using Magic School. So we get to hear these stories all the time. We've got over 80 partners, many of whom are proud ACPE members. And it's just so amazing to hear how educators are using Magic School to just deeply personalize and scaffold learning and really transform educators' work. So I'm excited to just kind of give you a little sample today to kind of get the wheels turning of how folks might be able to use Magic School in their setting. So I think what is so cool about Magic School is that it's really designed for everyone in school buildings. Initially we, of course, think about teachers and how it's going to dramatically change their lives, but really it's been neat to see how different districts are thinking about how they can tap into it for their leadership teams. So it was incredibly inspiring to see the Edmonds team present back in May, actually at ACPE, about the incredible Danielson tool that they've built in Magic School to empower teachers. They used it during their PLCs to really deeply consider how they could use Magic School as kind of an additional peer and thought partner to improve their classroom work. So I'm very excited to kind of continue that conversation this spring. We're going to be back at ACPE. We are proud to be partners again with you all.
Yep. And can I jump in real quick? You are our first sponsor on the podcast since we have opened up and confirmed registration. So thank you very much, Magic School, for being a platinum sponsor of the conference this year in May. So our ACPE attendees, please go find them in the Platinum Hall. They probably will be looking quite sparkly. I don't want to make any promises on their behalf, but
or quite sporty.
Yes,
or that both, and they don't have to be mutually exclusive, right? So
that's right.
That's
we'll
right.
be both. We're going to be believing in all of our teams and believing in all of our teachers and school leaders. And another kind of anecdote that I wanted to share of a really amazing ACPE district is the GAPS team. They have been developing a fantastic tool it has been really cool to see it come together. There have been several principals that have really taken a leadership role in building it out. Chris Sullivan has done amazing work, and they have been able to dramatically improve the turnaround time and the clarity that they can provide their feedback to teachers. And so they're hearing from their teachers like, wow, we've never received this amount of constructive feedback ever in our whole career. So that's been so amazing. We know how important that is to have that fast turnaround time for feedback for teachers.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. And
yeah.
Natalie, when you say gaps, that's Greater Albany
thank
Public
you.
Schools in Oregon. Is that correct?
Yeah.
We were just together in IT managers earlier today. Nice job,
Yeah.
Greater
Yeah.
Albany.
They are just knocking it out of the park. They're doing really incredible work. And like I say, at all levels of the system, they're thinking about it from the district, building level, teachers, and students. And so to that end, I also would be remiss if I didn't tell some fun, inspiring stories of how Magic School is impacting student learning. And so I would say, first and foremost, we know the cornerstone for learning is grabbing that attention and engagement. Can't do anything if your kiddos aren't bought in. And so a second grade team in a nearby district made this really amazing biography unit room where students could choose, which notable figure that they wanted to have a conversation with. And then that figure would chat with them in their language at their reading level, with whatever other scaffolds they might need, like emojis or short sentences to really engage them. And of course, keep them on topic if they veered off, as we know kiddos never do. And I just thought that was such a neat use case. And a similar one, a district in Oregon built a custom tool that allowed students to have a PDF read to them aloud verbatim. And that allows them to access and engage with some of these primary sources that might be beyond their current reading level and make sure that they, are not othered in the classroom. They're getting to access the exact same resources as their peers. So I just think that the possibilities are endless. It makes me so excited to think about, how we can tap into this tool to really meet all learners' needs and interests and keep that joy of teaching and learning alive and well. And for those who haven't used Magic School before, I just also want to reiterate that we've got moderations built in. So when I say about, what students are doing in Magic School, I just want to underscore that students are never exposed to inappropriate, unsafe content. We've got real-time monitoring to ensure that teachers and administrators have full visibility. They're notified immediately if anything ever inappropriate or concerning is even prompted into the system. And recently, we've incorporated some more alert banners on the student side to give them some healthy reminders and encourage that healthy digital boundaries to really protect our students. So anyway, I could go on all day telling you stories like this. But I want to say that a way that you can, stay engaged and stay plugged in is to visit us at magicschool.ai. Definitely sign up if you don't have a free account already. If you're a CTO, we actually have a page built out just for you that probably answers some of the burning questions on your mind. And then make sure to follow along on social media because Andrew posts the most amazing little 1-minute videos that give you really bite-sized ideas of things that you can truly watch, during your planning period, in between meetings, and immediately implement. So yeah, we are excited to hear more stories of how everyone continues to use Magic School here in the Pacific Northwest.
And I really think that Andrew needs to come to the conference where he can get lots of content
I know.
for all your socials because it's a fun conference.
I would love to. It's beautiful. I mean, I've only been up there maybe a handful of times, and every time I'm like, I tell my wife, why are we not living up in this area?
Yeah,
It takes it up
pretty
another
darn
level.
magical. Yeah, it's like no other conference you've ever been to. It's incredible.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sponsoring this episode. And it is a little weird that we recorded the episode last night, but for the rest of you, stay tuned for a wonderful conversation about AI in the academic space with our good friend Chris Hagel. And with that, we will transition to the normal episode.
We will. And Andrew, we will cheer for your Vikes and Marc and Natalie's Seahawks for the weeks ahead. It's already a kind of a topsy-turvy season.
Yes.
Well, the fact that the
Yes.
Seahawks are doing as well as they are is just stunning.
You got to believe.
Believe. That's it. That's
Yeah.
it. We're cutting now because what a perfect way to end.
Perfect.
Thank
All
you
right.
both, and thanks to Magic School.
Yes, thank you.
All
Absolutely.
right.
Thank
Bye,
you all.
everybody.
Bye.
You got to shout it. Put some real feeling into that.
With intention.
Yeah.
Good thing we cut out the cussing ahead of our hellos just now.
It is nice to be back. We have not recorded an episode in a little while, and I've been missing it, quite honestly.
Yeah.
We did our last recording the week of my surgery. So, I think people might have noticed. I doubt it if anybody even watches. My hair is a lot shorter now because I cut my hair off for the surgery because I knew I wasn't going to be able to wash it for a little bit. And for those of you who are wondering, what is Marc even talking about? At the end of September, I was determined that I have a brain tumor, or I had a brain tumor, I should say. And that tumor is now gone. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the cut line, like from ear to ear, and they shaved a stripe in my head. So it's pretty cool looking. I think everybody should get a haircut like this from now on. But it was really amazing. If anybody is at all interested in seeing the pictures, well, first of all, I asked if I could keep the tumor because we named it Joe.
And we placed bets on what the answer would be.
And the answer was no. The answer was hell no. And the surgeon actually said, well, we have to send it off to pathology. And I said, okay, that makes sense. And then I said, can I get a picture of, and then he cut me off and very excitedly said, the tumor? Of course you can. And I said, no, actually, I want a picture of my brain. I want to know what my brain looks like. And he goes, absolutely not. And he never gave me an explanation why. He just was very clear that I would not get a picture of my own brain. But when it was all said and done, I got a picture of the tumor, which was 2.5 centimeters round. So, like a spherical quarter. And then they gave me pictures of my skull. So where they cut a big portion of my skull out, which they told me might not actually get put back in right away, which was frightening. They gave me a picture of that with the cut lines, and then with if you want to know about a bone graft, I can tell you all about bone graft and how that works now too. So find me at the conference or just message me either through Discord or shoot me an email and I'll send you pictures because they're fascinating.
Yep.
There
And
you go.
true to form, you exceeded all expectations and estimates.
Yeah. I mean, they let me go a day early. I had almost no pain coming out of surgery. When I opened my eyes, the first thing they asked was, how much pain am I in from a 0 to 10? And I said a 2, and it never got any worse than that. So,
and they were able to close your head, which they thought they might not be able to
put the bone back in. Thank God.
Put the bone back in.
If it was
you had
up
a
to
lovely drain. You had
Yeah.
one of my favorite things in life, like a Jackson Pratt drain.
So my head looked like a baseball. The stitching they did on it looked like baseball stitching. And some of my friends because my birthday was right after this, they gave me a custom baseball that had a laser burn picture of me on it. And it said, happy birthday. We're so glad that Joe is gone, Mr. Baseball Head. So, I'm glad that my friends could take some humor in this too.
Yeah.
But
it was also kind of, it was like an epic World Series time frame also, so it's all related.
It is. But I was very fortunate. Long story short with this, they did microscopic pathology testing on the tumor, came back with a couple of weird little inconsistencies. Apparently, it was a funky looking tumor.
Those who know Marc in the ACPE audience, if you think of a contest for all the COSIN chapters on which chapter would have the funky award, and you have to nominate the person that we're going to put forward as our candidate, I suspect that you would be the one that would win that candidate race.
There's always Steve.
Langford versus Elliott on the ballot.
But the physician's assistant that I was meeting with, she's been this surgeon's physician assistant for 12 years. So she's very knowledgeable. She said, there was some weird stuff, which is why we sent it for molecular testing. So essentially they tested 4 genes and 2 genes came back as turned off through mutation or whatever, but it was to be expected because I had a tumor and those were the ones that said your cells don't have a tumor. And then the other 2 were on, which was good because those don't have an aggressive tumor genes. So this essentially is a benign tumor. And she said, this is the best news you could have gotten. We didn't even necessarily expect this, which was terrific.
Way to be an overachiever. And you were messaging like 2 hours after surgery. And I don't know if I've ever been more horrified and also just ecstatic to get a text from someone whose brain was possibly still exposed to air.
So before I talk about my pop culture things, because if you also don't know, I can't drive right now because this all started with the seizure. So I can't drive until early spring. I have been very bored and I have watched a lot of TV. But before I talk about kind of the pop culture stuff I've been doing, I really think we should bring out our guest. I know that our guest probably hasn't watched a lot of the same things that I have. He's too busy, like traveling all over the place and speaking and doing all sorts of conferences and different engagements. But I really want to bring our guest out because it is Kris Hagel, who is what's your title, Kris?
Chief Information Officer.
Okay, Chief
And
Information
I will
Officer.
say reigning K-12 AI expert in the North American education space.
Okay. Well, that's big shoes to fill. All right. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Kris is the CIO of the Peninsula School District out on the peninsula, just on the other side of the bridge near Gig Harbor or in Gig Harbor. But the fun thing about this is Kris and I actually started working together in 2001, which was the year I became a technology TOSA in the Bethel School District. And Kris was, I think we just determined you were the computer operator.
I think so.
What were you doing then, Kris?
I was printing report cards and financial reports on an old VAX mainframe.
Yep. The green bar printer, I mean, that stuck
Oh, yeah.
around for quite a long time with the burster and all the crazy stuff. But
Yep.
yeah, that's Kris and I have known each other for that long, and it's been a really interesting path for the both of us, kind of how we've ended up where we've ended up, and we've stayed friends through the whole thing, and it's been really great. I'm just really excited to have Kris here with us today. It's just like having an old friend here.
Thanks for having me. Yep.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Kris, a lot of times we talk about pop culture stuff. If you have seen any of these things, you're welcome to chime in. If you have anything to add, please do. I would like to point out that Rachel sends me pictures of the movies she's watching on planes. It's just a picture, and she says, okay, you have 1 second to tell me what movie this is. And usually I can do it. But
Okay.
so everybody knows, we're all like tech people. We have iPads and laptops and things. She does not watch movies on airplanes on an iPad or even her phone. She watches it on the seat back screen. I don't know why you do this.
Why would you do it a different
That
way?
still has them.
Delta. And they're very nice.
Okay.
I mean, but like my phone is high definition. The iPad is a beautiful screen. I couldn't handle watching an edited movie on the seat back. That would just drive me crazy.
It's like my favorite escape. I don't get to watch a lot of stuff at home because I'm usually doing other things. And like the airplane, it's where that way I'm not looking down at my screen. I'm sitting up in my chair. The screen's right there, perfect distance away.
So anyway, as I was saying, I can't drive, so I've been super bored. I've had a lot of friends sending me things to watch. Rachel asked, have I been watching Pluribus? Yes, that has been pretty interesting. I really dislike the character in that one, even though I understand what she's fighting for and it makes complete sense. They really make her out to be a really, I don't know. It's hard to deal with. But I've been on a bit of a thrillers kick lately. I've kind of strayed away from the sci-fi. I watched All Her Fault. I don't know if you've seen that one. That is a very interesting movie around child kidnapping. It has the dad in this one is the same husband as the first season of White Lotus, and he plays pretty much the same kind of character. So without giving away too much, that was a good one. But then I watched the new Claire Danes show on Netflix, The Beast in Me, and it was awesome. It was such a great and just engaging show. But if you're going to watch it, I'm going to warn you now. Claire Danes has aged quite a bit, and she has got crying on screen down. Like she can just cry on command, and her chin starts to quiver every single time. And I'm not kidding. Like every single episode, you see her chin quivering at least 9 times. And I got so sick of it. Like, I'm like, this show is pretty wrapped up and you're still crying all the time. Like, stop, just stop. Like, you can not do this anymore. But it was an awesome show. It was a really awesome show. And then I, of course, was just telling Rachel, I binged an entire show season last night and I was in the office yesterday. I binged all of Zero Day. I don't know if you have seen or even heard of Zero Day. Zero Day is a Robert De Niro show where he is a past president, and they say they have a 1 minute 0-day attack that takes down literally all of the software systems in the United States, and over 3,000 people die because of it. And he gets brought out of retirement, they say, to figure out to run a commission. It's not so much about the software, it's more about the overreach of government through commissions to suspend the Constitution and citizen rights. You can tell that it was written kind of recently, but it was it got me going. It was good, and threw plenty of conspiracy types of stuff in there too. So if you haven't seen 0-day, I recommend. Oh, and then I watched The Girl in Cabin 10. That's
I don't know that one.
That's also a Netflix movie with Guy Pearce, I think, is in that one, and somebody else. But it was okay. So yeah, I've been watching a lot of TV because I have nothing else to do right now. So, Kris, how about you? What have you been watching?
I did start The Beast in Me, so I have started that. I'm only about 2 episodes in, but
Start counting how many times her chin is like.
Well,
shaking.
I will now. I hadn't so far, but I guess I will be from now on. So yeah, no, I really haven't had a ton of time lately, honestly. So yeah.
So two connections here. Number one, I think in the ACPE Instagram feed, there is, I'll have to find it, a post with me reading the book 0-day. It was the year that we were doing the ACPE reads. And I think it's probably based on that book. So that will be an interesting little overlap to ACPE. It must have been 2020. And then Claire Danes had a really late flight home last night and watched The Family Stone. I had forgotten how good it is and how hard it is to watch Sarah Jessica Parker's character. But Claire Danes is amazing in that. So it's such, the universe is amazing and all of these little connections that it throws in here every single episode.
Yep.
Yeah.
I will say that I guess I haven't seen Claire Danes in anything since the Romeo and Juliet time.
Oh.
And so I just remember her as this young
With Leo.
Yeah, as this young kind of fresh-faced actress, and she has aged a lot. But yeah, that was a great show, I will say. Just a fascinating thing. But
I'm going to look up Claire Danes' age because we're sitting here talking about her aging. And
she's going to sue us.
No, I'm just saying that I just think that she's probably younger than all three of us, possibly.
That'll make me feel better about myself, I guess. All of us should feel better. That was mean. I shouldn't say that.
That was really mean.
I know. Why don't we cut that into a B-side?
She is 46 years old, you mother trucker. You better watch what you say.
I got her by 6 years? Okay. Good times.
We're going to have Claire Danes on as a guest and say, hey, I knew Mark Elliott when he played college football. And man, watching this podcast and boy, he's aged. His chin wobbles.
It does. When I cry all the time. So actually, to get to our topic tonight, Rachel, do you want to talk about our topic tonight?
I do.
What are we talking about tonight?
We asked
This is
Chris
like our
Hagel.
session, Kris.
Yes, I know. You get Kris and Marc together and the whole podcast could just be Kris and Marc talking about things. So, Kris, a couple of years ago, I've known you for a long time. We've debated lots of things. I think we've done a couple sessions together. Always knew that you were just one of those people who had thoughts in your head and things that you wanted to lead on, just kind of one of those natural leaders. And then what started happening a few years ago was you were 2 clicks ahead, I think, of most of the rest of K-12 in thinking about okay, so this AI thing is real. It's coming at us. There's obviously still revolutions that we're going through, but really, you were the first one, not just saying oh, cool AI. You were talking about cool AI, and I'm the lead in a district with thousands of students and X number of teachers. And this is a systems change. And we lead on big systems change, generational changes like this. And so you weren't out there just saying I love this AI tool and here's what you can do with it. You were saying, here's where we see enough promise in this that we're going to start with actually having a plan and some structure and thought given to how we want to do this as a district in Peninsula. Is that a fair way to encapsulate that ramp up of work? And has it been almost 3 years ago? I know over 2 years ago.
Well, I was telling this story today because I actually spoke in front of the Washington State Senate and the Early Learning Committee today, talking about our work. And this is actually our 4th school year now. with working on AI. And so we actually had teachers that were kind of dabbling in the spring of 22 before ChatGPT even came out. And so, I was really fortunate at the time when ChatGPT kind of hit the scene. Like, even though we had teachers that had done some PD, I still wasn't completely sold on this. So I was like, this seems like a long ways off. Like, and is there real usefulness to this? It's cool. I saw a session from Richard Collado and he showed a couple of things probably in the spring of 22. And I was like, oh, okay. That still seems like 5 years off before it's going to make a big difference in AI or in education. And then I think ChatGPT was the kind of wake up call. And I was fortunate because I didn't even believe it the first couple of weeks, but my engineers, like the guys that were sitting in the back, they're like, this is something really, really big. And at the time, our technology department was actually, it's a long story, but about a year before, my superintendent had called me in and said, Kris, I don't want a technology department anymore. And I was like, oh, do I still work here? What does this look like? And he was like, no, you go and talk to Melissa, the head of teaching and learning. And I don't want a teaching and learning department either. So you guys go figure out what you're making. And we had formed the Department of Learning and Innovation at the time. And so we had all of the instructional facilitators that sat 10 feet from our engineers. And, my engineers were like chewing at them every single day. Like, hey, you got to do something about this. You got to do something about this all through December of 22. And finally, couple of them broke down and they were like, all right, let's go figure something out. And so we went and sat down with high school teachers. And that was when I could kind of see, like, in seeing their faces and seeing the array of emotions in the room that day when we were showing them this. And it was just, some of it was terror on their faces. And some of it was like, and to some of their credit, some of them came back and said, you know what? We've always knew that we needed to change some things about the way we taught English and writing. Maybe this is the catalyst to do that. And so, I've leaned on some of those teachers. Like, I don't do all of this myself. I tell stories about the teachers that are actually doing the work in the buildings. So I think that's it more than anything. I do have a weird passion for it these days because I do think it's going to change so much. But it's just, I think the one thing that I'm realizing more than anything now is this is more than a technology thing anymore. This is getting people accustomed to change at a pace that I don't think we've ever experienced before. So, like, every day something is new. Like, even it hit me a couple of weeks ago because I have a team of core teachers that I've been working with since spring of 23, and they call them the AI Action Research Team. I had them together for their first release day of the year back in November. I'd really kind of exhausted them in their thinking throughout the day. And by the end of the day, one of them finally just admitted, who's been a really forward-thinking teacher. She's like, I don't know if I can keep up with this. Like, this is year 3 and it's always constant. I was telling a story today at the Senate meeting. Like, when I had one of their meetings last year, I had a plan going into the morning at 8:00 in the morning on what I was going to lead these teachers through for the day. And then every single AI company made giant releases that day at like 10:15.
Yeah.
And like everything that I had planned for the day to lead them on was blown out the window by 10:00. And like, people are really struggling. Even people that have are able to really adapt to change are like, they were reminiscing about the good old days when the buttons used to move in Google Drive or in Google Docs. And then everybody used to get so frustrated because, oh my gosh, the waffle is in a different place now, or they changed the waffle to something else. And they were like, oh, I just wish it was the old days where I just had to learn that the button is in a different place. Not everything I believe about instruction isn't even a thing anymore. And so I think that's the thing that I'm realizing more than anything is the way that we've led for, Marc was saying we've known each other for 25 years. Now this is, I think, my 26th year total overall. The way that we've led ed tech initiatives over the years, you could always kind of see what the end result was going to be and you could backwards plan into those. You can't do that anymore. Like, I have last year and a half ago, our superintendent kind of restructured the core of the district and we moved away from having assistant superintendents and now we have 5 chiefs. And one of our chief of schools who oversees principals is new. She came from another district, actually came from the district Marc and I worked in. But she's like, Kris, just give me what the principals need to know a year from now, 3 years from now, and 5 years from now, and I will get them there. And I'm like,
That's cute.
I can't do that for you. I can't even, like, I've gotten to a point where I think I can get us the next 4 months with principals and what we're going to work on for the next 4 months. But that's about as far as I'm going to be able to reliably trust that I know what's going on and what we want them to work on and what we want them to learn. And so like it's a whole different leadership challenge that I think we aren't really accustomed to leading.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it, when I drove down to Olympia today, I brought one of our teachers with us and he and I were discussing this in the car, and he's still he is one of our best teachers in AI, and the things he's doing in his high school chemistry classes are just mind blowing. But like we were talking kind of philosophically about like people have to just give up some of the things they believe. And that's really, really hard change. Like getting people to just say, okay, and we've been going through this in our district because we changed early literacy programs in the last couple of years and moved away from core knowledge to the science of reading, and getting people to give up what they've known for 20 years about good reading instruction. And now we're having to do the same thing in high school. And this is a lot of change in an organization really quickly. And reading is going at a much slower pace than AI is going. So it's a lot for people.
I mean, and I think you can be thankful that as long as we've had this conversation, which has been about 4 years, your district has been very open to the use of this. You were well ahead of most districts in pushing for no board policies, no restrictive policies, engaging with teachers. Because we took your approach in Olympia fairly quickly after you told us about it, of train the teachers, give the teachers the PD, work with them on how to teach with this tool, not to fear the tool. And so we've been doing a lot of I don't know how similar it is, but the 3 technology coaches in Olympia have just constantly been doing tons and tons of AI PD with our teachers, of just trying to get them to wrap their heads around how to use the tool in their classrooms, how not to see it as something that is threatening to them. And what I think is really fascinating, are you both on the Google Education West listserv?
Yes.
Did you see that today? Did you see it today? It was
as I pulled into Olympia, and I'm like, I'm going to sit and tell these state legislators what to do about AI. And then you've got a giant school district in Arizona who is blocking every single piece of AI that they can possibly find.
Like Tucson or something?
It was Tucson, yeah.
Yeah. And they were like, we just passed board policy. It was a tech director saying, how do we block this? And it was saying, I don't think we can. I actually don't think we can block it. But it's a massive school district that said, we are, I mean, I hate to say it, we're so afraid of this that we're gonna put policy in place to make sure that the kids can't use it, which is never gonna work. I mean, that's the first realization I think that everybody had to come to.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's like that belief right there is an equity conversation more than anything. Because all you've effectively done at this point is you've blocked it from the kids who don't have means to do it themselves.
Absolutely.
The kids that have money, the kids that have their devices at home, the kids that have parents that are going to pay for their ChatGPT subscription, those kids are going to be just fine and they're going to get these skills. But those kids that don't have that ability, you've now taken that away from them and taken that away from their future.
And I absolutely agree with that. But at the same time, it's almost because I think the 3 of us, when this first started happening, and I think, Kris, you got so far ahead of this so quickly, you probably didn't experience it as much as maybe Rachel or myself did. I had at least a full year of teachers emailing me saying, will you please write a board policy about AI? And they would leave it right there. And they would leave it right there because they thought that everybody thought about AI the same way they did. Sure. Which at some point in time, I had to try and figure out what does this person believe about AI? Use it, don't use it, block it. And because it was never the same, I will say that the majority of them were just put a policy together to block it. But it was this like, here, take this thing and make this thing work for us, or get rid of it altogether. But your technology, so you should be able to do this. Yeah. And I think we took your kind of direction on this too, which was policy isn't necessary, but like language in a handbook is necessary. How you use it, is like anything else with academic integrity. That's where your language around AI should be, is in the handbook, not policy governing, the tool.
Yeah, I'm incredibly fortunate. Our school board, when they set their last strategic plan, they included a goal of innovation. They wanted to be, out on the cutting edge of what's going on in education. And that has given me that ability. Like when AI came out, I took a lot of calls from our board, in that spring, like, what are we going to do? And I was like, this is what I think we should do. I think we should just give guidance. I think it's moving too fast. I don't think you guys should make a policy. And they're 100% on board with that. And they have been ever since then. And they they're really happy with where it's going. I think we adjust and adapt. I mean, when we first did this, we didn't come out with any sort of guidance around data privacy with AI. We realized over time, like last fall, I was like, ooh, I'm starting to hear some things that I don't really like
Yeah.
from the classroom, but also from some of my peers working at the district office. I'm like, you did what? Hold on. I think we got to roll this back and we got to clean this up a little bit. And so you're just constantly, when you're out there at the beginning, at the front, you're like, I don't know what to do with this. And you're trying to adapt and adjust as it goes. One of the big ones right now that I'm really struggling with, and I've had some conversations with other districts across the country that are kind of in the same boat we are, kind of out there near the front. But we're starting to see a lot more kids using AI for mental health, for companionship, for therapy, for counseling, for just somebody to talk to. And like we had a student I get my weeks kind of screwed up, but maybe a month or two ago that we ended up bringing him in for a conversation about some other things that were going on. And he just said to the school security officer and the principal and the counselor, he's like, ChatGPT is all I have to talk to. Like, I can't tell my dad about this. I can't come to anybody at school. Like, I go to ChatGPT and I have these conversations. And that's why you're seeing them in the security logs or wherever, because that's, where I can go. And I brought this up. I talked to some high school kids last spring, and I was just kind of floating this idea. And I was seeing all this research coming out about, all these kids and adults going and having these companionship conversations. And what is this all about? And so I brought up with some kids, and one of the high school kids, they all kind of snickered and they were like, oh, nobody would ever do this. And the very next day I was in another classroom and he just goes, you know what? I have such terrible social anxiety coming here every single morning that every morning I pick up the phone and I talk to the voice mode on ChatGPT and it helps me get ready. And that's what gets me to school every day.
Yeah.
And so I had that conversation with his principal, and his principal is, he was pretty beaten up about this. He's like, oh, this is terrible. And he's like, but at least the kid gets here, I guess. So, then we can help him once he's here. If the kid isn't showing up in the first place, we can't help him at all. So I don't know. I don't have the right answers on any of this, but this is one of those things that like you're struggling on the front line because there is no playbook to go off of. Like, there's the Rhythm Project right now, which is doing some great work around this. There's some other people that are trying, but like, there's nothing out there that tells you, what do you do when a kid comes to school and says, the only person I can talk to is ChatGPT. And so
I'm so glad that you brought this part into the conversation, because this is the heaviness that I'm feeling right now, both in terms of some local stories like yours, and then really staying plugged into this national conversation around the adolescence type of streak that some of these AI companion models, whether it's from the large labels or whether it's from some of the more niche products like Character AI, if you've been following that product and the storyline. And there's harm. It's like it is true of everything, right? There is a promising side of this where a student feels like a human being. Let's not even talk students. Where a human being who has not found their people in the world yet has someone that they can have a conversation with. And that's big. It's scary because the technology, I would say, is not there yet to be used in that model. And we're seeing not only some devastating results of it, but also just clumsiness. And clumsiness because it's built on, we're as clumsy as human beings. That's why we have people who are like, I haven't found my people yet. And so it is really, the mirror is reflecting on us. And I think there's a lot to figure out around safety for those human beings, young and old, because it is not just the young who are in harm at some point during these conversations. And at the same time, there are also these happy storylines and positive storylines where navigating a situation, learning how to move through a time of crisis or a time of feeling untethered. And instead of it being one of the stories that we hear in the news, actually being a very positive story about how my AI friend helped me figure this out. And so it's really fascinating. I wish that on some magical storyline that I was in a PhD program right now, actually with the time and the supports around me to think about the things that I would want to set up as a research project to define this moment in time, this little like lightning in a bottle moment before we go into the next maturity cycle on this. We can't sit here with any like, and here's how it's going to go, or here's what we need to do, because
Do you think
I don't
that
think any,
if you did a dissertation on this, that it would even be relevant or valid by the time you argued it at the end from when you started?
good question.
That's it. It's the thing that, so one of my biggest partners in crime in my district is our director of research and assessment. And he and I, every single day, we probably are talking about what's happening with AI for, 15 to 30 minutes every single day. And I will, because I just don't have the patience or probably the ability to understand some of these research papers that come out, I'm like, here, tell me what this says. Like,
Here,
tell me,
AI
is this
friend,
well, no, it's like,
tell me what I need to know.
It's here, James, figure this out for me. But he and I will have these conversations, and we'll pull up these research studies that just get released, and they're done on like GPT 3.5 or GPT 4. And like the models are so different now, and they react so differently to what these researchers had studied. And they finally got peer reviewed and were able to release this research. And then the models are completely different now. And so the validity of the research doesn't even kind of match anymore because of how long it takes to get through that whole process.
Okay, so I think my frame would be flipped, and actually my focus would be on the humans. Again, to that idea of the mirror, because the models will improve, right? Speed, capacity, all the things.
Yeah.
For now, I would probably focus how I would observe and measure things on actually the human interaction side of it, and the changes that are noticeable there.
So I have a question.
Go ahead.
Finish your thought, because I'm going to kind of take us in a little different way.
Like, I've been working with, there's a producer from a big national media organization that's going to come out this spring and do essentially a 1-hour documentary with our kids on this exact topic, and sit down and say, from a human perspective, what is this doing to you? What is this making you think about for all of these conversations? But not just that, but like your future, because our kids are having this existential conversation in their own head about what is this going to mean for my life, my career. Like, there's a kid a year ago that I was sitting with in this class and having a conversation with the entire class. And the kid was like, I wanted to be a lawyer since I was in middle school, and I am graduating in 3 months. Like, does it even make sense for me to go to college and then to law school and spend 6 years? And is what I have always wanted to be, is this part of being a lawyer? Is this going to be a thing? And, they're struggling with that too. And so there's a lot of pieces that kids are struggling with right now.
So I want to challenge that just a little bit. And that's kind of where I was going to go with this next piece. Do you think the kids are really struggling with it existentially like that? Or are they more kind of growing into it because they can adapt to this so naturally? Adults, this is again where I was kind of go. I think we still have a generation of teachers who you and I included, all three of us, were not born when the internet was in place. The internet,
I remember when the internet came.
Yeah. I remember my first email address was at PLU. I had a Pine email address from UW because that was the only place we could get it from.
Pine mail.
Yeah.
The good old days.
Now we have students who, while they weren't born with, with practical, the modern AI, they're pretty open to its use, and they jump to it pretty quickly. And the example I will use is my niece. Over Thanksgiving, my twin nieces were up and we were playing a card word game where you had to speak in an accent that the card told you to speak in around a certain topic. It was hilarious. But I looked down and she's using ChatGPT in her phone to write a script for her for what to say and how to say it in a certain accent. And she's just doing it on her phone. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, this is crazy. This is just a game. Like, why would you do this in just a game? And so that kind of made me think, have always said that the kids are going to use this outside of school in their lives. But I never really thought about the fact that she was using it on her phone for a game, just a game. That was so different to me. Sorry, I'm rambling, but
No, I had, right before Thanksgiving, I went and met with, I think, 5 classes of kids at one high school over a couple day period. So it was, a smaller sample, 125 kids or so. And me and one of our assistant director in CTE, she and I did this together. And we were just we spent the entire period with these kids and asked them about AI. And, after this first or second class, I looked at her and I said, these kids really know a lot. And they're more than 50% right too. they're not, there's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of things that they're getting wrong, but like overall, they're more correct than they are incorrect in this. And I said, we've got to start asking them, where are they learning all this? Because I know it's not happening in our classrooms. And so, we started asking the last 2 or 3 classes, and we're like, hey, where are you getting your information? And they're like, I get it from TikTok videos. I get it from Reddit. I get it from Discord forums. And or I hear somebody over at the lunch table talking about it. And that's where I learn. And so it depends on how much, there's still, I think there is dread in some cases in, having this internal stress about it if they've put enough time into it. There's others that are getting incorrect information. And so then they're like, oh, it's just going to launch missiles and not kill us all anyway. It's going to take over the world, the Skynet conversation. And so because we haven't done a great job yet of figuring out how do we explain this to kids. And I mean, we have across our entire system, we have pockets of kids that are getting wonderful instruction starting in elementary school on what is AI, what are algorithms, that kind of thing, but it isn't hitting every kid. And so I think there are kids that are really struggling. I think just conceptually around what is this going to do to society. I mean, there's a lot of kids, we were talking about this today, there's a lot of kids with worries about the environmental impact of all this. There's a lot of kids that worry about, is this a net good for society? Because they're starting to realize, they're getting old enough to realize that maybe social media isn't a net good to society. And so they're kind of comparing this down the same lines. And so I think when you can get kids to talk about it, you get some really good information. I think a lot of times you'll get groupthink, but if you can get kids that'll truthfully tell you what they think about what's going on, then you can get some really good information from them.
I think it'll be really interesting as we see the younger students coming up who probably haven't seen this as a new thing that's occurred during their schooling career. So if it happens while they're in early elementary, it's going to be one of those things that's always been there. And does that attitude then change because they take it for granted? Do they think about those environmental impacts, the power that it takes? Or is it just a thing that's always been there that they've always used and they're just accustomed to using it? I mean, that'll be really interesting. That would be something I would love to do a study on. I think would be fascinating. All right. Yeah. So Rachel, you're going to say something, but I do have a question for all three of us when you're done.
Okay. Actually, let's start with your question because then I think I'm going to fork us a little bit.
Okay. So this was the original question I was going to ask that was going to take us off a little bit, because I know we're talking about education. I know we're talking about students, but I actually see probably the biggest challenge to this are the teachers and their adjustment to using this tool. Their acceptance of this tool. It's sort of like when teachers were like, I'm never going to need the internet. I'm never going to need email. I'm never going to need blah, blah, blah. And so here's the question for you. What part of AI or what AI tool have you quickly adopted into your life, maybe without even realizing that you've done it? I'll go first to set the example. To kind of frame where my head's at. When I search Google now, I expect to see the Gemini summarized results of multiple websites. I look for that immediately. That is the thing that I just rely on. I don't want to go through the list of websites. I love it. That is the thing that I think I use the most.
Kris, I'll go next because I'm going to get nerdy here for a minute about where do we start and how closely do you relate AI to machine learning? If we include machine learning in this, I would argue the Gemini results are more machine learning than they are AI. They're doing a better job of collating and then recognizing and putting information back out for you to use. I think that when we sit here as older than Claire Danes people, I think I've been adopting machine learning and AI into my routines for years now. And I think two of the things that I take for granted are the slowly self-driving car features, right? Auto cruise control and the lane assist types of things. And then also just language translation and language access tools. We take them for granted in this phase where we can translate things on a dime. And it's not really AI, it's more machine learning, but it still improves life and communication and connection between human beings.
Yep.
All right, Kris.
Just going to take us off topic for real quick. I took my first Waymo a couple weeks ago on self-driving cars. The coolest thing.
Were you the one that drove through the police standoff?
I was not, but I did have somebody. I did have somebody in a really old El Camino swerve at the Waymo. He was you could tell he must be very angry at these self-driving cars. The car did a wonderful job of swerving right out of the way. But if I could buy one tomorrow, my commute is 45 minutes each way every day, and 10 minutes into the car ride, I was over the novelty. I'm like, this is just great. I'm going to sit back here. I'm going to pull my laptop out. I'm going to get things done as I get at a 30-minute ride in the Waymo. I was like, I could have this every single day and my 45-minute commute each way, the things I could get done or accomplish in my life would be awesome. So yes, I'm a huge fan. No, I was going to get back to Mark's question. I think the very first thing that came to mind was almost exactly on the same wavelength as Mark's. I adopted Perplexity a long time ago because I just hate actually having to scroll for answers anymore when I need a search question. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to ask Perplexity and it's going to do it. The other thing that I think and this is really into the geeky world right now, is I am probably in an AI coding agent every single day now, either working on software projects that we're doing at the district or, like trying to figure out how do these things tie together and what can you have AI do on its own to pull together systems and, just experiment with processes. And I think that's something that's happened over the last 6 months in my head. It's like open on my screen at all times. I just flick over to it. But the other one that as you were talking, I was thinking through, like, it's just second nature now to go and ask for opinions on how to do things better. Like I was working with one of our teachers union partners because we're getting ready to send out a survey to set the next school year calendar. And for whatever reason, this became my job like 5 or 6 years ago, is to be on this committee and figure out that stupid school year calendar. But I was like, you know what, this calendar or this survey is not that great. And I just throw it into AI and I get this amazing survey back. I'm like, why didn't I do this a lot? Like, it's just constant little things like that. Or I'm like, I can do it and I can do it just fine and we'll get fine data. But like, I could actually do a much better job at things by just asking. And it's like, it's become second nature to just go and like, all right, if somebody smarter than me were to do this, what would they do?
Yeah.
And so,
somebody who writes better than me. I know my thoughts and I know my points, but I am not a great writer. Help me.
I've gotten a lot to just talking now and doing dictation to AI, just so I can like word vomit out all my things and then have it clean it up and make it into something that like makes more sense.
Yeah.
Like I'm just going to get all of the thoughts out of my head faster than I can type them onto the keyboard. And then I'll go back and have AI help me clean it up.
Yep. So Kris, similar to your Waymo example and found time. Apologies, Marc, if I said this on another episode, but I actually do have a more
I had
practical.
A tumor. I don't remember.
True. I have a more practical answer to Marc's question. I was going back and forth to our legislature a lot last winter, and it's a 3-hour drive for me to get over the mountain to Salem. And I was getting called back a couple of times the day before for the next committee meeting. So now doing it in the apps wasn't great. So what I learned was I would turn on my Apple Voice Memos app and I would sit there and essentially talk for maybe like an hour and just like workshop this idea of like, here's how I want to tie these. It was about a data bill and some data modernization work that we're doing. So here's how I want to tie this storyline together. I had been in the weeds of all the details and all of the reports and all of our data structures for so many months leading up to this that I kind of knew most of it in my head so I could drive along without needing to look at notes. And so I would talk into that voice memo. And, in an ideal world, Apple's transcription would just be perfect when I pulled over at the first gas station once I'm back in service and over the hill, but it's not there yet. We'll see what happens with the partnership with Google as their white label AI provider here. So what I would do is I would take that audio recording and drop it into ChatGPT. And I would say, this is me workshopping a short 5 to 10 minute presentation that I need to do for a state legislature related to this bill and this topic. Please give me a 5-paragraph starter place. And I was pleasantly, like more than pleasantly, I was pretty awed each time that it had just saved me, because I was like, okay, I'm leaving at 4:30 in the morning to get over there at 7:30. So I've got some space and time before the 9 o'clock session. And in a pre-AI ChatGPT world, I would have needed to find time to actually sit and type out my thoughts or to make index cards for the session. And I was actually able to do it just talking in my car, like workshopping over and over again, this short little presentation, and then letting ChatGPT pick out what it thought were the most salient or the best points and versions. And I used it at least 3 times last winter. It was still to Marc's point, it was still my thoughts and my ideas and what I wanted to say. But what it did was it took the polish work from your first draft to your final draft and just sprinted through it.
Yeah. So I did a presentation at a maintenance conference 2 years ago about it was a panel that I was actually moderating, but we got into evaluations. People really wanted to talk about evaluations, and at the very end, and remember, these are maintenance people, and if you think about it, your maintenance people do more evaluations than anybody else in your schools because there's so many
A lot of
custodians.
custodians.
And I said, how many of you use ChatGPT or a GPT service to write your evaluations? And you would have thought they were going to kill me. Like, people were ready to jump out of their chairs and strangle me. And I said, I'm the first to tell you right now that I use it. It's a better writer than I am. If I have a narrative portion to do, I know the points that I have to give to the model so it can return for me the narrative that I want in the style that I want. I have to work still.
Yep.
And the people on the panel clearly didn't understand. I mean, they were saying, they don't know my employees. I know my employees. I said, that has nothing to do with it. Of course it doesn't know your employees. You have to tell it about your employees. I would never do that. That's just that's horrible. That is not what you should be doing as a job. And nobody is sticking up for me. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, whatever. And as soon as the session was over, about 5 of the super young supervisors came up to me and whispered to me, use it all the time. I just kind of laughed. I was like, but you weren't brave enough to say it while I was getting lit up by everybody else up here. But it really was kind of a funny thing. But I want to come back to one other thing that kind of wraps all the way around to something we talked about at the beginning of this. So I just recently had an experience where I used ChatGPT for a purpose that I had a number of people say to me, I can't believe you did that. And how angry were the people when you told them? So I got my pathology reports for my tumor well before the doctor actually read them to me. And so when they arrived in my medical portal, I looked at it and said, I don't understand anything this says. This is highly medical terminology about cells and tumors and all sorts of things. And I sat there thinking, I read it. And this is my old Marc moment of I'm reading it, and I'm getting the feel for what it says, that I think it's okay. And then finally I was like, F it. I'm putting it in ChatGPT. And I'm just not going to, in my head, I'm like, I'm not going to tell the doctors that I did this because I don't want to offend them. And so I did it. It read it. It broke it down for me. And then, I'm doing that very simple thing you do with ChatGPT, which is make it more plain English. Help me understand this section, explain this section more for me. And it really took me through this roller coaster of anxiety down to because the results were pretty good, quite honestly, to a place where I felt much better. But at the same time, again, I'm thinking this is ChatGPT telling me this. This isn't the actual doctors telling me this. And then the molecular report came in, which is the gene sequencing portion of it. And I just threw that right into ChatGPT right away. And then I went to the doctor's visit, and the physician's assistant I saw, she just looks at me and she goes, so you saw your results in your portal, right? And I said, yes. And she goes, did you read them? And I said, yes. And she goes, okay. And I said, I put them in ChatGPT. And she goes, awesome. Great. Good for you. And I did not expect that answer at all. And so, and she literally just said, so you know that you got terrific news. And I said, yeah, I mean, we're supposed to talk about it. I guess I just don't fully trust it. But yeah, that's what I did. And it was really interesting to see a medical professional with highly technical terminology in a report say, good for you. Like, you did the right thing. And I was like, okay, I was ready to get yelled at for even doing that. So I don't know where I was really going with that. It just was a very interesting situation.
I have a couple of coworkers that in the last couple of years have really been struggling with some health things that they couldn't figure out. And like one of them, she was taking every report that came back from the doctors. And she was like, all right, help me understand this, help me synthesize it, help me come up with good questions to go back and ask my doctor. Yeah. And it got to the point where the doctor's like, are you a doctor? Like, you were asking such high level questions. And she goes, yeah, but not that kind. Like, she's got an AD. She's like, yes, I am, but not like a medical doctor. But yeah, I think there's going to be some really fascinating things with healthcare. Like I was reading this guy I follow on Twitter. He's a biologist who's huge into AI and what AI can do to help discover drugs and that kind of thing. And he was saying that when Nano Banana Pro came out a week or two ago and its ability to diagram things, like he's able to now throw concepts, like these concepts that he's I'm just going to guess at his age, he's over 50, So he's probably been doing this a while. He's probably
Older
He's
than
older
I don't know.
Claire.
He's older than Claire
Older
Danes.
than
Older than
Claire
Claire
Danes.
Danes. Yes, he is older than Claire Danes. You know, so he's been doing this a long time, and he's like, there's still concepts I just don't understand. He puts them in Nano Banana Pro and says, explain this to me, make me diagrams so I get it. And he's like, it's unlocked all of this thinking that he's never been able to do because he just never understood these concepts. That now, like that model and the way it can diagram things and explain it to you in pictures and visuals, it's opening up a whole new world for him as a scientist because he's finally able to grasp concepts that were so hard for him.
And I know, again, this is a ed tech podcast, but hasn't
Mhm.
AI already, has it cured diseases, or like it's gotten very close, right, into breakthroughs? I don't remember if
I know there's, yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
The one I'm following most closely is and again, it's kind of more machine learning than AI. I hate to keep splitting hairs, but it is the processing power to look back at the like millions of lung x-rays and all of the diagnostic scans. And here's where health and medical makes a lot of sense for this. And that's because it's all driven by money. And therefore it has a very regulated code structure on everything from the diagnosis to the DX to the treatment, the TX, and then the outcomes, and then the diagnostics that feed into that, as well as data points. And because the transcriptionists and the billing services all follow the codes to essentially get Medicare reimbursements and or insurance reimbursements, it's a very structured data set. And so the reverse engineering of when a human doctor identified, and we'll keep picking on the lungs, but I believe it's happening with more types of diseases than lung cancer, when the scan included these things and the doctor did this diagnosis or staging and typing, and then this treatment plan, the outcomes were favorable, and then another set not favorable. And when you can amplify that by millions, and I'll come back to that in just a minute, then the idea is that we'll be diagnosing more accurately and creating treatment plans more accurately, and that will improve outcomes across the board. So maybe not curing lung cancer in this first generation, but just improving outcomes for those who end up with lung cancer.
And
I
improving
would say that,
research, right?
yeah. There's a couple ones that are really fascinating to me. So like Google just released a few weeks ago a model that they trained specifically on a very specific type of cancer and the DNA around it. And when you train the entire model around those DNA sequences, like the amount of like experimentation they're able to do right now on this very specific type of cancer is, they really think that it's not going to take them very long to solve this one very specific thing. But I think that when you talk about machine learning, I was listening to a podcast a little while ago, and this one's fascinating to me when it comes to health is there's a guy that started a company because he had a very rare, I think it was a bone disease. And there's only 40 people in the world that have this bone disease or whatever it was. And he was diagnosed with months to live a couple times. And he went into remission twice on it, and just from experimentation and whatever. And by the third time that he came back with it, he's like, I got to do something. And so he started throwing machine learning at all of the things that are associated with this bone disease. And are there existing drugs that are on the market that might target those same receptors, target those same areas? Found out that there's a organ rejection drug that targets exactly the symptoms and all of the things with this bone disease. And he's now essentially just wiped out this disease for people because he'd used machine learning to find something that there's no financial incentive to create a drug to solve this problem for 40 people across the globe. But if there's already a drug out there that can solve the same thing, then he's essentially solved that disease for somebody. And it's really just machine learning and throwing a ton of data at programs that can solve that. And so now he's built a whole company to just start researching these tiny diseases and what you can do to cure them maybe, or provide a drug that might already exist. I have a friend who's a scientist in Seattle, and he does drug discovery. And the last time I saw him was this summer, and he said that their office is a third of what it used to be because they can now use AI to do so much of the work that they did in their labs. Like they can just throw it at different AI models and it'll do the simulations. It'll do some of the experimentation. It'll do some of the research. It'll do some of that stuff that they needed these people for. And he said that their office is just shrinking because of that. And yet they're producing more than they ever have.
So, but I do have a question. Do you, Kris, and Rachel believe that the way AI works right now, or the GPT models, or whatever it is it the Ouroboros, the snake that eats itself? Is that right? So it's consuming itself. So at what point in time do you believe that this will get to a point where it's consuming its own content and then will go in a weird direction? Because in a certain way, it already is, right? It is already, but it's not. I think we're still, as a population, creating enough content that there's stuff for it to, that it's not really like bending its own content. Do you see that happening? Should I worry about that?
I spend a weird amount of time watching what's going on with the world of AI. And if you watch where the big names are right now, the Fei Li from Stanford, the Jan LeCun, who just left Meta to start his own, they're not in the generative LLM technology anymore. They're getting out of it. So they don't see the future of this. It's very clear, at least these people that are really, really smart at this, don't see the future being in large language models. It's going to be something else. And that's where they're going to hit the next big breakthroughs. Like, you're going to see incremental improvements in large language models for a really long time. And I think a lot of the labs are already doing what they call LLM as a judge. So what they used to do is reinforcement learning with human feedback, and like it would spit out answers and a human would say, yes, that's a good answer. No, and there's a lot of really problematic stuff with that because they used to farm it off to the third world countries to do. But now they're using LLMs to do that work instead. And so, is this an appropriate answer, having the large language model answer in the training process? And so it's kicking back. And so they're already starting to absorb their own content. They're already starting to do their own training. I saw a headline that I didn't have time to read today about, are they going to the models start training themselves to get better and make those new connections inside themselves? I think anybody that's way smarter than me at this stuff is saying, those people are saying that I don't think they can get there with these large language models. I think you need something else. So I'm not worried about that per se. I don't know what the next level of model is going to be and what that'll do.
So I am increasingly following this conversation and thinking around language versus understanding when we talk about AI. And so right now we've focused mostly on language, and which is great because similar to medical diagnosis and billing, languages are kind of fixed code structures, living, but pretty structured code. Understanding is harder. And when we see, to your kind of perpetuating circle, Mark, or a snake, the hallucinations and some of the struggles right now in the current generation are because the language understanding and the language intelligence is there, but the understanding of what it means isn't. And so some of these hallucinations are just because the engine or the model doesn't know the answer and just starts making stuff up from the language, not from understanding and making a reasoned guess or a reasoned hypothesis. And so I'm starting to be curious and tease out those breakaways that are going to go towards more the understanding side now that we've got the base of the language. And I do think it's all like the scaffold that is being built in this. And then you'll throw quantum in there and the capacity at some point and then really, really rock it. So that's an excellent question. And it's going to be fun to sit in armchair quarterback and then look back 20 years from now when we're still older than Claire Danes and reflect on
She's not going to beat us at this game.
But she will have put out the Beast in Me 2, 3, 4, and 5.
That's right. Yes.
She's going to keep meeting these weird psychopaths.
Yeah.
Yep.
Should I just give it away? Sorry.
I mean, you could see it on the preview of the show.
So, Mark, what do you think, though, about that?
I don't know. I think that the two of you are light years ahead of me with this. I think that I don't know. I can't ignore the fact that in a large language model, it's consuming content from the internet to answer questions, and therefore it's consuming its own content. But is there a tipping point if that's what continues to happen, where it's going to be consuming mostly its own content, and then is it reliable? I just don't believe that we as human beings right now, and in the age of information, we create so much content daily. I just don't really see that happening. But kind of the relevant application of that is we're building our own student data dashboard right now. We have been for a couple of years, and one of the developers on my team has a degree in machine learning. So he wants to use all sorts of, AI product and that kind of stuff. And we are actually talking about how do we build a product that kind of like the guy who put his own medical condition in and it researches his own medical condition for 40 people across the globe. This is an individualized answer for every single student in the district for building an individualized education plan based on all of these different markers. And as we just at the very highest level, I just said, we can't just go purchase the premium version of ChatGPT for this, because we as a school district have different beliefs than a Texas school district. We use different curriculum, which dictates how we have to be looking at our students and the test scores and the standards to indicate what the next steps are going to be. So we have to train our own model so that it's consistent with what we want it to say. And nobody batted an eyelash at that. Everybody understood it. That was great. It just is a lot of work. And I said, basically someone in the teaching and learning department is going to have to start feeding academic articles into this thing the way we want it to think.
Yep.
Right? It's just not open to the wide world, because I don't want a Florida school district and the way they teach their students having any sort of bias or impact on an individualized education plan for our students in Olympia.
Yeah. Marc, I'm sitting here smiling like a fool, because this is actually one of the things that I was hoping we would edge our way out on. Celebrating some of the work that Kris and Peninsula have done. Tell us a little bit about this. And are you so geeked out and happy and excited about it?
I'm happy because we can get it.
I know. I texted to Marc a couple of days ago, and he was like, I don't know. I don't have money to buy anything. I'm like, all right, here, look at this. No, this is something I started dabbling back about this time last year, because I went to college for computer science. It's one of my first jobs. And probably the last 5 years I worked with Marc, I was doing programming. And then that was the first job in this district too. And I was like, I keep seeing all these articles about what AI can do when it comes to coding. And, you see all these things about vibe coding and all the problems that could arise out of that. But what if somebody actually knew software engineering? And so I started finding all these people on the internet that are doing like actual software engineers that know how to write software and how they're using AI. And so I was like, all right, I think I can do this. And so it turned into Kris's weird hobby thing that he was doing to my gosh, we actually have a thing here. And it also came at the same time that we were starting to see some of our AI usage in our staff was, for lack of a better term, just making a slightly better version of teachers pay teachers stuff. They're generating really generic stuff. Yes, you can read 50 articles from any big edtech visionary, and they'll tell you, go and make a lesson plan on AI, or, go and generate a rubric or whatever. And that's great. If you don't have the skills, though, to know that we believe in universal design for learning in the Peninsula School District, we believe, we utilize the CKLA curriculum in K through 8, or, if you don't have that kind of background information that you're giving to AI, it's going to spit out generic crap that is not, any good. And so we started talking about, all right, well, how would we do this? If we wanted to, have a platform where all of the tools that our teachers used matched exactly what our teaching and learning team believe about good instruction. And so we were like, all right, well, we can do that in some tools, and maybe we just need to do this ourselves. And so that's why that kind of transitioned into that. We had been partnering for over a year with Vanderbilt University. They had released an open source tool as well. Those guys are amazing. They've done some great work. They've done some amazing work dedicating time to helping me. I think one of the reasons is the guy used to be a K-12 CTO before he went to Vanderbilt. And so he felt my pain. So that's why he spent so much time volunteering to help me. But their product was targeted towards college researchers, undergrads, grad students, and it wasn't really matching what I saw in K-12. And so I was like, all right, well, we can make something for ourselves. And so that's where we came up with this AI studio concept where you can go in. I've worked out all of the privacy permissions with all of the big LLM vendors. All of the data is stored in my virtual cloud. Everything is safe and secure. Opens up a ton of things that you can do. We're having all these conversations and meeting on a regular basis with our student services staff, talking about IEPs and how we can do things with AI, either compliance checking or writing goals or analyzing data to help write better goals, and that you can't do in very many places because you just can't safely put that data out there and have AI work with it. And so we're really excited about the things we're able to do now. and you go to any of the big AI tools that are out there right now, and you can click the build a rubric button or whatever. We do that. We have a rubric button that a teacher can click, but it also knows what we believe about good instruction, what we believe about universal design for learning, what we believe about the Danielson framework for effective teaching, and all of those things. And so when it spits this out, it does it and it tells you. So like one of the big things we're focusing on this year is we don't want to just offload cognitive thinking to people, to AI. We want to actually make them better at what they do as well. So like as we're going through this task, let's take a rubric, for example, it'll generate the rubric, it'll generate it how we believe. And then it can also go through and explain why it did it. So that if you didn't know, why did it put these pieces into the places that it put them into? That's why it did it. We're working on some stuff for our principals around observations and coming back and giving them coaching conversations on, hey, if you were to do this, if you were to paste your notes in, you could look at these things and maybe you should do this a little bit better next time when you're taking observations. Or here are some potential coaching conversations you can have based off of this so that you're getting better at your job and maybe taking something off your plate at the same time. And so that's where we're kind of focused with that AI studio right now. I'm really excited this morning for the very first time. My data engineer was able to show me, I've had him working on this for a really long time, and he's actually showed me a proof of concept where he's built, I don't want to get too technical, but essentially it's called an MCP server that AI understands. Most of the large language models now know how to talk to an MCP server to do things. Like you can go to services, whatever. He has built one that can now talk to our data with row level access so that it knows who the person is and what they should have access to as far as data. So you don't have to actually train the model. You can actually just ask it to go out and figure out what is the data I need. And me as, Susie Smith, the fourth grade teacher, only gets to see the information about her 24 kids. Like if you're the principal in that building, maybe you can see more information about all of the kids in your building or all of the teachers. And so that's our next step. We're still a long ways away from that, but the minute you can start to actually pull in some of that data, and like Marc said, our big goal is to be able to have teachers or instructional coaches or building principals or operational staff be able to ask natural language questions and get the answers you need and not dive into 20 dashboards and figure out where it is what you want. Like I have this mocked up thing that I started playing with a couple of weeks ago where I have an AI agent that I can ask, hey, how did my team do on tickets in the last week? And it will go to Fresh Service, pull out all that information, send it to Nano Banana Pro, build me an infographic, and it just shows me within 2 minutes a brand new live data. And it isn't pulling in a dashboard. It isn't doing any of that stuff. It's just grabbing data that we need and the AI making those smart enough decisions to say, all right, I know that you want data this much and you want this information about it. And so that's the direction we're going now on some of this stuff, is to like really target how do you make humans better and how do you get them on the things that you believe so that the AI works with the information that you believe is important in your district. And whether that's instructionally or policies or standard operating procedures or whatever it is, making sure. And that's a huge task. Like that's one of the things I've been talking about in a lot of places is as CTOs or tech directors or whatever your title is your data ready for that? Like, is your data in a place where you can actually make it available to people? And I'm not just talking the tabular data that you're getting out of your SIS or your discipline system or your screeners or whatever, but like, where do all your policies live? And can you easily get to them with AI? Where is all your standard operating procedures? Where is all of your documentation about everything, the way that you do things in your district? And what do you believe is important? Is it accessible? And is it in a place where you can hand that off to AI so it can actually do the things you believe?
You are out ahead of so many, Kris. I mean, I know there are a number of kind of lead rabbits in this work, but just really impressed to watch what you've done, first of all, in supporting your human beings in the system. I'm excited to continue watching you a couple seats out. And we've got a couple of leaders in our Central Oregon area that are like following you closely as well, have some of the same ideas. I have geeky questions about where you are on the tokenization and thinking about student data privacy and how we do some of this in a way that is helpful, but also protective. And we're going to have another episode with you.
I'm going to tease you just a little bit. Like I'm
okay.
Like a week away in AI Studio from tokenizing every PII piece. And so when it goes to the large language model, you strip out the PII, you give it a tag, and then you reassemble it when it comes back so that nothing Like I'm
It's like
I'm
a, it's
totally
like an,
comfortable right now with where it is, but I want to be even more comfortable. And so
Mhm.
this was one of those conversations that we talked about earlier where I went to my friend that was way smarter than me and it explained how I could do this. And I'm like, oh, this isn't actually as hard as I thought it would be. So it's a plan. It's already built. I just have to feed it off to my AI
Mhm.
coding agent
Yeah.
to actually complete the work.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mark, Kris and I did not collude on this episode ahead of time. Seriously,
Okay.
each thing that I've been like, so then I'm wondering, and then Kris is like, oh yeah, well, and so next week we're launching this thing that you just asked about. It's amazing. Like you're following like a model pathway. Kris, is there anything that you wanted to say, show off, brag about that we didn't touch on?
No, I've been thinking up a really cool session for ACPE. So I'll get that submitted kind of around this AI coding MCP server. Like, I don't know what it's going to look like yet, but I've got some really cool ideas that I think would be really interesting for the audience at ACPE. So hopefully I'll get that written up and submitted here any day now. So,
I mean,
and hopefully it gets selected.
If you're going to do the MCP server, you have to come dressed up as a Tron character, please, with the frisbee, like the disc. Sorry, that was one of the first movies I ever saw on VHS. I have to admit,
believe
that
it.
was at a sleepover at a friend's house.
Yeah.
And it was amazing.
Yeah, because we're older than Claire Danes. That tracks.
1982, not 84, 1982. And it was Richard Linklater. Is that right?
Linkletter or Linklater?
I don't know. Link something.
Okay. Yeah.
But now I knew for me that the two of you are way in the deeper end of this pool than me. I have wonderfully smart people that work in our department and they take this ball and run. And usually I'm like, call Kris, just call Kris, email Kris. They have your email address. And I'm really excited to kind of see where it goes. I think that there's one area that's not necessarily student related that I would love to touch on in maybe a different episode, or maybe we do this at the conference or something. I do think that we should touch on the legal aspect of this, which is we talk all the time about should we hire in-house legal counsel because of how much money we pay out to attorneys because we're always being sued. When does this become that thing for us that we can trust it? We can trust legal advice from one of these services and we don't have to keep paying incredibly expensive law firms. And I know that's something that they're pushing back against. Stop reading and using our briefs and our law cases. That's not yours to consume and regurgitate. But like medical, it's out there, you know.
I am so fortunate that I sit near our attorneys, and it was so full of promise in the early months. Like, oh my gosh, this is going to save us time. And now it's costing and taking more time because they're so cautious to triple check everything. It would just be faster to actually go through the statute and the law books. So Mark, I imagine that we get closer to it. I just don't know what timeline I would put on it because it is the unique thinking through the dynamics of a case that make attorneys get paid what they get paid, and why it is a profession that a lot of people want to do. And this goes to that language versus understanding. And then from understanding, being able to create new understanding. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I guess the more I talk, the more I don't know.
You know, I was getting ready to call our attorney because I wanted him to put something together around records retention with AI. And I was like, there's nothing, like the state archivist has got some weird stuff. There's all kinds of RCWs that may or may not apply. And I was like, God, this is going to cost me 10 grand to go to him, like just to do this. And so I was like, all right, well, let's just see what AI will do if I put it on a deep research project and give it 30 minutes to go out and figure this out. And it gave me really good stuff back to the point now that I'm still going to send it to him, but I'm hoping that I'm only going to pay him 2 hours to read, like I'm going to take and grab all the stuff and I'm going to rewrite it and I'm going to check all the links myself because, I can do that as I've saved so much time because it's did all this for me. But then I can send it to him and just say, hey, is all of what I'm assuming here true? Is this procedure I'm going to write? Is this SOP that I'm going to accompany it with? Is all of this legal? Does this match your understanding of where we are in records retention laws right now? And because I have other ideas that I want to do with AI right now, but I don't believe that I should because I don't want to create public records in the process. Yeah. And so I really want to get this cleared up. So I think over time it may reduce the need. Like in this case, I'm not going to pay him, whatever that would have been, 100 hours to do this work. I may pay him 4 hours to do this work, and I hand off 4 hours of computer work for the AI agent to go out and do the research
Yeah,
for me and bring it
a
back.
final.
And yeah, but I
Deliver
still
a
want
final
him to
draft.
I would still want him to stamp it and say yes.
Yeah. So
Charles says this is good.
yes. Okay, so follow-up question, Kris.
Mhm.
Are you including prompts and AI transcripts as things that might be public records?
I believe that they are right now, unless you have from what I am understanding in the state of Washington, because of course every state can have a different interpretation of that, it can be considered a transitory note unless it is the thing that makes the final decision that you generate a policy or a procedure about, or you decide make a decision about some sort of action. Then you need to keep it. If it's only like you're using it as research to generate a final decision or generate a document that becomes final afterwards, then you don't. Then it can all be destroyed. So what I'd like to do is be able to auto delete the things in our AI studio.
Yeah.
Because I don't
That's
want to keep them around for records.
Yeah. Okay, we should go like stretch our legs, have an evening,
Have an evening. It's 9:40.
have a night.
I'm gonna go to bed.
Yes. Okay, Kris Hagel, thank you for joining
Yes.
us.
Yep.
This has been
This was
great.
awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
I'm looking forward to the conference and us doing something while we cook bacon. Wait, I wasn't supposed to say that.
You
We'll
weren't
cut
supposed to
that
say
part
that.
out. But anyway, if anybody makes it this far in the podcast after listening forever, come to our session because maybe you'll get a delicious piece of bacon. Who knows? But yeah, thank you so much.
Yep.
I
Thanks for having
personally
me.
am super proud to know you and see how we've worked together for so long and just seeing where you've gone. It's been very impressive.
Yeah.
I have to absolutely tip my cap to you for your journey. So wonderful to watch.
Yep.
All right.
1000% agree. And with that, Marc, we are unplugging.
Well, you said plugged in earlier and I almost stopped, but it was so serious when you said the term plugged in that I didn't want to make a joke about it. So it's fine. We can do our unplugged thing here now. Yes, we're unplugged for the evening.
Bye.
Bye.